Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Come into our Zoom. Good to see everybody, although I don't see you, but you can see me for now. We will get started in just a second. I just want to give everybody some time to join us. Normally what I do is I ask people where they're from, but I know where everybody's from. We're all from New York City tonight. Okay, we often have webinars with people from all over the country. So tonight, New York City, my favorite. All right, so let me share my screen. Hold on. Here we are, and this is tonight's topic. So I really do want to welcome everyone. I know it's late where you are, and you have better things to do tonight probably than learn something new about the Tne Test. Or at least more fun things to do. But I do want to share with you a lot of what we've learned about the test and how you can help your child get ready if you're going to be going through the private school process this year. If you have a kindergartner, maybe a first grader. The focus is really for the younger kids tonight, although if you have questions about older kids, you can certainly ask. If you do have a question, just put it in the Q&A box and I will get to it at the end of the webinar. I'm going to get to everybody's questions at the end. And I'll move through everything fairly quickly so that we do have time for questions at the end, okay? All right. So, first, what I want to do is just kind of go over the admissions process this year, which is different from what it has been obviously in previous years. So some things are the same and anything in blue is kind of a change. So the timing, of course, you're going to start to submit your online applications in early September. I'm sure that many of you, most of you have probably done that a year before the child is ready to start school. The birth date is the child has to be 5 by September 1st. Now, in the past, children with summer birthdays have been somewhat of an issue in many schools. And that's because many of the schools prefer to have older children in their student body. So I know even my daughter, who had an August birthday when we first applied, there were several schools that asked us to wait a year and apply the next year when she would be a little bit older. And that does happen, or it has happened a lot in the past. Now, I'm thinking perhaps this year, maybe it won't be as much of an issue because many kids and many families have moved out of New York. And so it's possible, we don't know this yet, but it is possible that there might be fewer applicants to a lot of the schools. So maybe it will not be as much of an issue, but we don't know that yet. You want to narrow your list of schools down to 8 to 12 schools, just as you've always done. You'll submit your application, including essays about your child. And I believe this year, these are going to be more important than ever, just because there's less opportunity for the schools to get to know your kids the way that they have in the past. In the past, there were in-person tours and in-person interviews. These are now, they seem to be happening online now. As for testing, it used to be that there were some schools that required an additional test beyond what they would give in small play groups. And so the thing that's changed this year, and this is what we're going to talk a lot about, is in the past it was the ABLE test and a test called the SRT, or the School Readiness Task. But they're not giving that anymore. They are giving the Tne Test, the thinking and engagement, and that's what we're going to talk about today. In the past, there were always small groups of kids that would go for visits, and that gave the school an opportunity to see your child, interact with your child, see how your child worked with other kids. And one of the things that they always did with the small group visits is they would pull children aside, and each school would give their own test, maybe like a 10-15-minute assessment. And every school did what was important for them to know about the children. And they all did different things, but they were all assessing for kindergarten readiness skills. So the in-person school visits are not going to happen at many schools. Most schools right now are saying they're going to do something in lieu of that. Now, it's possible that could change, but as of now, that's what most schools are saying. They're talking about doing virtual play assessments, which means talking to your child online, asking them questions online, or maybe other options, which we'll talk about as well. And in fact, some of the other options that are new this year is that some of the schools are asking for video clips of your child, maybe action photos of your child, pictures of their art projects, pictures of their work, written narratives, which are something like the interviews. Some of the schools will be observing the kids in their own nursery schools if they're doing in-person learning on Zoom. So it is possible that that if your child is going into their nursery school, that the nursery school will set up a Zoom camera in order for them to observe your child in their most comfortable environment, of course, which is at their own school. And then, of course, there's the nursery school report, which there always has been. So that's generally the process, and we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. Okay, what I learned, and I think what you've probably learned by now, is that every school is now going to have their own process. It will be similar to what I just described, but they will all do different takes on things that it used to be everyone did the same thing. So my advice to everyone is to check the school's websites that you've applied to and to see what how they detail what you're going to need to do. And once you apply to the various schools, I'm sure that they're sending you a much more detailed description of everything they're planning to do. And one piece of advice I want to give you is that, especially if they're going to do, let's say, an online Zoom visit with your child. So for example, Friends is going to have a Zoom interview with students, and they say that parents are going to be asked to leave during the conversation with the child. So other schools like Ethical Culture, they're doing a virtual play assessment. You can ask when you apply, you can say, well, can you tell me a little bit about what the virtual play assessment is going to be so that I can just tell my child what to expect? Because they always do better when they know what's happening. And so if you have questions, especially if it's, something that has to do with something your child is going to need to do, then ask the school, get the information you need so that you can make your child comfortable with whatever is going to happen. And my advice also is to do whatever they give you the option to do. So if they give you the option to send a 2-minute video, send a 2-minute video. Or to send pictures of your child's work, or whatever they give you the option to do, to take advantage of it, especially because this year they may not be able to meet your child in the way that they have been able to in the past. So I just pulled from some of the schools, for this slide to just give you an idea of some of the different things that the schools are doing. And you can see, Trinity's asking for a 1-minute video clip, maybe of a conversation or your child doing an activity. Let's see, ethical culture is going to have a 20 to 40-minute virtual play assessment where your child will be engaging with a early childhood admissions person and doing just age appropriate activities. It's probably some kind of assessment that they're going to do with all the children, and they're going to try to get to know your child as well. Dalton says, after you apply, we will send you all the information you need so you can schedule your necessary visits. Horace Mann and Riverdale, as of now, they're not doing the Tne test, but what they've done is they are going to team up and give their own online assessment for kindergartners and first graders. It's $150, and you can learn more about that at their website. We talked about friends. They're going to have a conversation with the child while you're not in the room. Spence is going to plan to observe the child in their own nursery school environment. Now, if that isn't possible, let's say your nursery school is not having in-person classes, perhaps, you can give them a guided video and they'll give you the instructions for that. Poly Prep, they're doing virtual interviews of parents, and they are interviewing young children, but it's based on space availability and by invitation only. So they don't say much more on the website. So again, this is something you'd want to talk to them about and ask them about. Grace Church, you can do a 2-minute video that shows your child's creativity. Here's what Town is doing. They're going to be doing online interviews and inviting you to share your child's artwork, a short video, that sort of thing. So every school's going to do their own thing. And you just want to make a spreadsheet for wherever you are applying and make sure that you do all the things that they ask you to do so that you can present to them a really, truthful, good picture of your child and how great they are, and let them get to know your child through all of the things you write, through whatever you share, and then also through the visit that they have with your child if they do an online visit. Now, we'll talk about the thinking and engagement test, which I know that most of you probably know about by now. This is the list of schools that as of now have said they're going to use it. A lot of very, very good schools are using this assessment. And the nice thing is that your child is only going to have to take it once. And the scores are going to be shared with any one of these schools that's on the list that you've applied to, that you tell them you want to share the results with. So these are the schools using the thinking and engagement test. These are the schools as of now not using the thinking and engagement test. And we'll talk about what these schools are going to do as well. The thing that I want to say is that this thinking and engagement test is new, and that, a lot of things are changing and shifting right now. So, it is possible that maybe some of the schools on this end may decide to accept it. Maybe some of these schools may decide not to. Things can change, but this is what's happening as of now. This is what the schools have announced they are going to do. So this is the list of the schools, and I'm sure some of the schools you're applying to are probably on that list. Now, what is this thinking and engagement test all about? You can find information about it at this right here. And by the way, we will put this presentation and this recording up on our website, testingmom.com/classes. It will be up in a day or two. So you can come back and get this and go to this site and see more about it. But by now, you've probably read about it, and it is what they call a stopgap solution this year because of COVID, and it sort of will help relieve the pressure on families because you won't have to bring your child for a number of different tests. You'll do it once, and that will take care of a lot of different schools. As we've said, it's only given once. The results will be sent to the schools that you choose. They will not be sent to you. It is going to be administered on Zoom, so your child can take it at home, and it can take up to about 45 minutes. Your child's going to need to wear headphones. And so, you know, you probably do Zoom with maybe visit grandma on Zoom or friends on Zoom. So one thing you might want to do is get those headphones now and get your child used to using them when they're on Zoom now, so that this is not a new experience for them when they're actually tested. During the actual assessment itself, an adult needs to be in the room to help with the technology. The adult can wear headphones or earbuds, and you're supposed to stay busy, but not on your device. You should read a book or stay quietly busy. You can knit or do whatever you want during the test. And you'll have to sign a consent form that says you're not recording and you're not sharing any content that you see online. And when you apply to a school that takes the test, they're going to send you the link to register. It's $250. You can get financial assistance anywhere between September 8th and December 18th. Your child can take this test. My advice, honestly, is to wait a little while before your child takes it, just because it's a brand new test, and you really want to make sure that even though the testers, who are supposed to be, and I'm sure they are, you know, early childhood professionals who have been trained to administer this test, but you want to give them some time to get used to it and to get used to giving the test with young children. It was developed by two psychologists who are an expert in early childhood development. It is not a standardized or normed test, but it is a test. If it was developed by psychologists in education, they know the types of things that you do to assess kids in various areas. And I'm sure they're using that knowledge to create this child-friendly test or activity that they're going to take the children through. Now, what is it going to cover? These are the areas that they say it's going to cover, and it's really kindergarten readiness skills. That's what these things are, and we'll talk about them. But it's your basic kindergarten readiness, including problem solving and engagement. So what are they going to look at? They're going to look at your child's receptive language, and I'll explain in a minute what each thing is, expressive language, their verbal reasoning, their nonverbal reasoning, their problem solving abilities, how teachable are they if they try to teach them something new. They will look into things, developmental areas that schools need to know in order to determine fit, which we interpret to mean pre-academic type skills such as math, reading, or English language arts. They will have to do some thinking, and they will do some assessment of your child's level of engagement on when they work with them on the test. And we'll talk about what all of those things are. So couple of recommendations I just wanted to make before we really get into it. And the first thing is that I do recommend that you practice ahead of time. And ideally, you should be practicing on Zoom with the same headphones and the same computer that your child will use on the test, and in the same place that they might be sitting, just to make them really comfortable with this whole process. If you're using Testing Mom practice questions, and I know many of you are members of Testing Mom and you're already doing this, you can even do it in your own house, where you have your child on Zoom and maybe have someone sitting next to them, and then you're in another room and you can ask them questions, use our questions and do them on Zoom. So your child gets used to answering questions that they see on the computer. Ideally, I would love to see you work with a teacher or a tutor or somebody that your child does not know for at least some sessions. Again, just to get them used to what they're going to be doing here. And if when you're actually taking the test, when your child is taking it, if there are technology issues that take place during the session, make sure that you reach out to the people you scheduled this test with and let them know that you had technology issues and you're concerned about it, especially if you are concerned about how, if it affected maybe your child's performance. Let them know, put it in writing. Same advice we give you when your child is going to be tested for Hunter or when your child is going to be tested for G&T. If your child is sick on the day of the test, reschedule. If you wouldn't send them to school, don't have them take the test on that day. If they are just happen to get sick the day after the test and you're concerned that, you know, maybe they weren't at their best, maybe they were on their way to getting a cold or getting sick, just again, you might want to let them know that that happened and you're a little bit concerned about it. This is more about the Zoom sessions with the schools themselves, but if your child is going to have a Zoom session with schools, what I would say is, you know, try to schedule the sessions for the schools you want the very most a little bit later in the process, just so that your child gets used to having these sessions over Zoom. And also so that the school has more experience doing them, because this is new for them as well. They've never assessed children or you know, done admissions over Zoom. So the ones that mean the most to you, that you want very much, if you can put those off a little bit, I would do that if you can. Now, what do you say to your child about this virtual Tne test, or if they're going to have a virtual interview? Okay, so here's the kind of thing you might say, and you would adapt it to your own child. So maybe the day before or the morning of the test itself, you know, you might say something like, you know how we always talk to grandma on Zoom? Well, tomorrow you are going to get to talk to a very special teacher on Zoom who wants to know how 4-year-olds like you think and learn. She's so nice. She's just like your teacher, Mrs. So-and-so, or whatever he calls his teacher or her teacher. And she just loves meeting smart kids like you. Another idea is, you can say, or she's writing a book about how smart 4-year-olds like you learn, and your visit with her is going to help her write her book. You know, so that's another way you can put it. And I have other ways too. So if you don't think these are going to work for you, just get in touch with me. But anyway, if we're talking about, let's say, a virtual interview, then you'd say, she's going to want to get to know you and just talk to you, and she may ask you some questions. Or if it's the Tne, you could, and this can work even for the virtual interview. And the teacher's going to do some, you know, fun and interesting activities with you, and she's going to ask you questions. Just listen carefully to her questions and answer them. And she may read a story or play a game with you. So just follow her directions and have fun. And you're really going to be helping this teacher by talking to her and answering her questions. So do your best. Don't be silly. This is not a time to be silly. This is a time to show this nice teacher who you are and just how well 4-year-olds like you listen and think. So some version of this you can do. And of course, you want to describe whatever the school tells you their visit is going to be like if you're talking about a virtual visit. But you just want to make your child feel very comfortable. And you want to let them know it is something to take seriously, but not too seriously. You know, we want them to have fun. We want them to do their best. And we certainly don't want them to be silly, as some kids might do if they don't know they're not supposed to. So, what is it that if a school is doing a virtual interview or a virtual assessment, what are they going to be looking for? They're going to be looking at your child's social emotional development, possibly pre-academic skills, their cognitive skills, their kindergarten readiness. They're going to look at things like, do they listen? Are they confident? Do they cooperate? What are their language skills? Will they talk to you? How motivated are they? And of course, get a sense of your child's personality, because they want to create a class that has a mixture of personalities. You don't want every child to be outgoing or all the kids to be quiet. You want a nice mixture of personalities. So they'll be kind of looking at that. And they'll do some testing, some assessment as well, so that they have data points on which they can compare the applicants. If they ask them all the same questions about what they know about letter recognition or certain math types of things, they can at least compare all the kids that they've met. And so they'll probably do some of that as well. Now, what is the format of the Tne test? We're going to kind of get into that now. And this is something that we heard, this is something that the Parents League has reported, that the way that the test will be given is that they're going to have a story, like a journey of characters. There might be some animation, there might be some music and sound effects, but as the child is going through the journey, they will be asked questions to help the characters along the way. And the questions will relate to the story that is being told, and they'll be embedded in the journey. And the questions will be around all those things we talked about: receptive and expressive language, verbal, nonverbal reasoning, problem solving, math, ELA, that kind of thing. And they'll be looking also at your child's level of engagement as they work with them. So what I want to do, and I'm actually going to switch this slide out for a minute, I want to kind of show you how we're doing this at Testing Mom, and just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So, and this is what we believe. It will be something like this. It'll be different. These are not the real questions, but something like this, where the child is told a story and they're seeing a picture like this. And I'm going to just give you a couple of examples of how this might work. So here's a story. I'm going to read you a story about a class of space babies from planet Ticklebelly. Now, in normal times, the students would be picked up every morning by their intergalactic space bus. And here's their intergalactic space bus. Hey, take a look at this picture. How many space babies do you see on the bus? And then your child would count and see that there are 7 space babies. And then the parent or the teacher might say, how many stars do you see in the picture? And they would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stars. And then they might ask them a question like, the windows on the bus are round, just like this shape, this red shape right here. Now look at the shape next to it. What color is that shape? And the child could say orange. What's the name of the shape? Triangle. So they might go through all the shapes to see what shapes your child knows the name of, or what colors your child knows. Okay, so now we're going to go on in the story, and this story is completely out of order. I'm just trying to show you some examples of how they might ask questions. But in this story, one day everything changed. A super contagious, easy to catch sickness that started on another planet was being passed around from space baby to space baby, causing many on planet Ticklebelly to feel funny in their tummy. School was canceled for the rest of the year. The doctors told all the space babies that they must stay away from their friends and play by themselves until a cure to the funny tummy sickness could be found. Freddie was confused that there was no school he could go to, and during the school shutdown, he spent several days fishing all alone with no other kids around. What does the word alone mean? Can you explain that to me? He spent several days alone with no other kids around. Well, when your child explains the word alone, he's using his expressive language and he's defining a term. They might ask a question like, how do you think Freddie felt when he had to fish all by himself? That's a question that gets to social emotional learning and expressive language. So the story goes on. During the shutdown, Mookie and his sister Goofarella played anti-gravity badminton together every day. They were lucky. Since they were brother and sister, they each had a built-in playmate, but they were getting pretty tired of each other. Goofarella's constant singing was driving Mookie crazy. Goofarella found Mookie's loud burps to be so annoying that she yelled at him. What does annoying mean? To annoy someone. Goofarella found Mookie's loud burps to be so annoying, she yelled at him. So again, that would be a language question, a verbal question, and explaining the answer would be expressive language. And then you might ask, if Mookie's burping was bothering Goofarella and Goofarella's singing was annoying Mookie, what might they do to solve the problem? So here, your child might say something like, well, they could agree that when they play, they won't burp or sing, or some problem solve. They would get their mother and have her help them figure out what to do. Whatever the child says, it's a chance for the child to problem solve and a chance for the child to use their expressive language. So there you go. That gives you a sense of how these questions might actually be asked in the context of a bigger story, an adventure story. Now, I want to give you some examples of different types of questions that may be asked, or ways you would get to, these different skills that we're talking about. So for verbal reasoning, we're talking about thinking and reasoning around representational pictures, which means pictures like these that are very real looking as opposed to shapes and figures. But also thinking and reasoning around language and words. So think, why, what, who, how questions, analogies would fall into that. Classification, like what belongs or doesn't belong in a group. So with a question like this, you might say, which picture is different from the others and doesn't belong? And here it would be this little boy because he's wearing shorts and all the other people are wearing long pants. They're all playing instruments, so that's not different. And so, you'd figure that out, but in this one, that's what this is. Trout and salmon are both what? They're both fish. Again, that's a verbal reasoning question. Receptive language is a child, well, let me actually do nonverbal reasoning since we just did verbal reasoning. I'll do that first. Nonverbal reasoning is just the opposite of reasoning with words. And it's your child's ability to reason with and solve problems using shapes and figures, charts, diagrams, that kind of thing. So these could also be analogies, classification questions, patterns, sequences, that kind of thing. And this here is a nonverbal reasoning question. Look at the pictures on top. They're all alike in some way. What picture on the bottom belongs with the pictures on top? And if you look at this a little while, you see that they all have the black part on the bottom. So the answer would be this, because the others don't. So that's an example of a nonverbal reasoning question. Receptive language. Which picture goes best with the word woolly? So receptive language is just your ability to understand language you're hearing or reading. And so any question that involves what a word means, or showing an understanding of words or sentences, or even a following directions question would be a receptive language type question. And an expressive language is your child's ability to use their words orally and later in writing to say what they want to say or express their ideas in a very clear and organized way. So here it might be a definitional type question, you know, what is luggage? And if they just say a suitcase, they might get 1 point, but if they give a more expansive answer like suitcases and bags and anything you can put your things in when you're traveling, that might give them more credit. So that's a definitional type question. And then here's an example of just a question where we want to hear your child's expressive language. So they might see a picture with a little story like, Lily's team is in the finals. The score is tied. Lily has the ball, but she misses the shot. Her team loses the game. Lily's upset. If you were Lily's best friend, what would you say to help her feel better? So your child would express themselves and say, well, I would say it wasn't just your fault, or we all played, or we're a team. So, you know, whatever your child says, but it's expressive language here. And then these are the types of questions, you know, there could be a math question. And when we talk about math, we're talking about computational type skills, or we're talking about math thinking, like sequencing, patterning, ordering, classifying. Those are all math types of skills. And this right here is just a, you know, little story problem, and you would point to the picture that answers the question. So Mary was supposed to read 10 books over the summer. By July, she had read all these books in the first box. Which box shows how many more books she needs to read to get to 10 books? And of course, it would be this one. And this one might be how many inches long is the worm? 7 inches. And then here we have our ELA or pre-reading types of questions, and we could get into early literacy, early reading. This is an early reading question. Which picture does not begin with the k sound? And that would be the suitcase. And then here's a picture, and the question is, Danny hopes he does not have a what? A cold, a virus, a wisdom tooth, or a cavity? And the answer is a cavity. So it's that type of thing where they see a picture and then they fill in the blank of the word that goes there. And so, and there will probably be thinking and problem solving questions as well. And those can come in any one of these areas. They can be math problems, verbal problems, questions, nonverbal questions, but it's where they have to think and use their cognitive skills to find a solution to something. And so the questions will be like this, but they will all be related to the adventure story. Now, I say they'll be like this. There's many ways you can ask these questions. And on Testing Mom, we certainly give you lots of different ways that these questions could be presented. So we don't know specifically how they're going to present the questions, but they will be something of this nature related to the adventure story that gets to whether or not your child has the skills that they are looking for, because these are the skills they believe are important that kindergartners have when they start school. Now, there's going to be some kind of checklist, and I'm not going to go through this in detail because I'm going to be able to give you this handout and you can read it. But they will look at things, they will look at how engaged your child is, because it is called the thinking and engagement assessment. So my prediction is there's going to be some kind of checklist, and the kinds of things they would look at for engagement would be things like attention to instruction, do they stay on task, how are they careful and thoughtful when they answer questions, or are they impulsive? How conversational are they as they work with the teacher? How persistent are they? Do they come up with a strategy for some of the harder questions and the harder kinds of things they've never done before? Then they'll look at just what they call their affect, which is how engaged and energetic are they, or are they kind of lethargic? Are they positive or negative or indifferent or excited? You know, what's their personality that's coming through? How confident are they, or are they worried and anxious? Those kinds of things. So there will be likely some kind of checklist that they'll use to kind of assess how the child does. The next question is, well, okay, if this group of schools is not using the test, what are they going to do? They're not using the Tne. What are they going to do? So, okay, again, this is our prediction, but I believe this is what's going to happen. I mean, in the past, they've always done their own assessments anyway. What we predict is that they're going to assess the kids by looking at their kindergarten readiness skills, and they're going to be looking at the skills that are most relevant to their own individual programs. And as we talked about before, if they ask all the kids the same questions, then it gives them the chance to compare all the kids on some data point. So, or on some data points that they talk about. So whatever they do for one, they'll try to do for everybody. And again, already, like Ethical Culture has even said that the visit with the child will be a virtual play assessment. Friends is calling it a conversation with the child. Now, we do know Riverdale and Horace Mann is going to have their own online assessment. So, but again, the prediction, both of those schools used the ABLE test in the past. They're not using it now, but I think, you know, you can practice on our website, maybe some of those ABLE practice questions, because those are obviously the areas that are of importance to those schools because they have been giving them in the past. It won't be the ABLE, but it'll be something about kindergarten readiness. And we'll talk a little about kindergarten readiness. You know, we're talking about reasoning skills, verbal and nonverbal, which is on the Tne, expressive and receptive language, early literacy, pre-reading, vocabulary comprehension, early math, and of course, kindergarten readiness behaviors like listening, being able to focus, follow directions, general knowledge, that kind of thing. Now, all of these tests here are on Testing Mom, or the practice for these tests are on Testing Mom. So we have thinking and engagement, we have practice for ABLE, practice for SRT, practice for the Bracken, which is an early childhood test, or the WIPC-4, which is what the old ERB used to be, and even practice for the Hunter College Elementary. So you can go on our website, you can practice these questions with your child just to see and make sure that they have all of the abilities they're going to need on this test. So I want to show you a couple of places, those of you who are members, where to go. And if you're not a member, join Testing Mom. You can have access to all of these questions. When you go on to Testing Mom, just go to our private school page and you'll find over 1,800 practice questions for thinking and engagement, including stories with questions embedded in them, plus kindergarten readiness questions. And of course, you can go to all those other tests as well that we talked about before and work with those. We give you online games that work on all of these same skills. And our IQ Fun Tree, you can work on all of the same skills that are going to be on this test: math, nonverbal, which is visual spatial, knowledge, language thinking, listening, memory, following directions, and early reading. You can work on all of that in a fun way. And then we also give you access to all the questions in our IQ Fun Pack board game. So you can, it's another fun way to work with young children on all these same types of questions. It's on the website. We give you access literally to over 35 online learning programs, many of which the schools that you're applying to use. So, you know, the ones I recommend the most for young children usually are Dreambox, which is math, And then I always recommend Reading Kingdom for early reading, Hear Builder for listening and following directions. All of these come with your membership, so make sure you're using these. And the others are all super fun and wonderful things. I mean, Tumble Book Library, a huge library of books for little children, Arbordale, another library. We've got so much, but use these just to work on the kindergarten readiness skills. Many of you I know have this. It's our Kindergarten in a Box set 1 and 2. These are flashcards you can work with. Again, they work on all these skills that we're talking about. Then the last thing, and then I'm gonna turn this over for a minute also to Ivan, who's here, before I get to your questions. But I do wanna say that we do have one-to-one tutoring. If you would like your child tutored over Zoom, and we also have some wonderful small group classes that begin next week. And we've gotten very good at teaching young children in very small groups, like 3, maybe 4 kids in a group. And they have a great time together, but we work on these skills. Ivan, are you here? Can you jump on and tell us a little more? Because I know you've been talking to lots of parents about these programs lately.
Yes,
and then I'll
hi.
answer questions. Yeah, this is Ivan, everybody.
Hello, hi, mom and dads. Thank you for joining tonight's webinar. So if you are looking for someone to talk to and speak with who's in New York City, who really understands the school system, who's been through the school system, practically will be your guy. So basically, we can discuss all the different avenues that are possible to you here in New York City. So as Karen mentioned, whether you're looking for private one-on-one tutoring that's completely individualized and customized to your child's needs, or as she mentioned, also we have our learning pods, which are group or social classes where your child can really work with other like-minded children. And also we have, the website, which is just a huge bank of materials and resources for you to practice as much as possible at home in between your sessions or outside of your group lessons. And really everything is designed to work together to really help you get to that 99. So it's just a quick 15-minute phone call. Really, we get to talk about your favorite subject, and that would be your child. So I make myself very easily and readily available. All you need to do is just email me at ivan@testingmom.com. And really, it's just a quick conversation, so you have nothing to lose. And guess what? It's free. So there you go. So.
Ivan, I'm going to write that down at testingmom.com. So you can talk to Ivan if you'd like to tomorrow, if you'd like to talk to him about any of these. And I wanted to just say the 2 classes that we have here are taught by everyone's very favorite teacher, Maddie. People really love her. And each week, this is 2 weeks of classes. Each week is different. So they don't need to be taken in any special order. You can take the second one first or the first one. I wrote the curricula or helped her. We worked together actually on it. So you can work with either one, first and second, but this is kind of 2 weeks of materials that they can do with other children. And the kids love it, and they all take turns speaking and being involved. She's great at getting the kids involved. Or the online tutoring here, as Ivan said, and he can really guide you through everything. But I want to get to your questions also, so let's do it. Okay, Karen, will you share this PowerPoint? Yes, I will. Here's what you have to do. It takes about a day, and we will put this whole presentation up on testingmom.com/classes. Hold on, testingmom.com/classes, and go to where it says testing. And you'll find this. I'll put it up. I have an earlier presentation that I did, but I know more about the test now, so use this one. And every time I learn more, I try to update the information for you, but it will be put on the website for you. Okay, how thought out was the Tne test? Has this been in the works for some time, or was it rushed to address COVID? What kind of experience does the organization administering the test have in conducting these types of assessments? Well, we don't honestly know any of this. I think people are concerned that it might have been rushed, but we don't know. Hopefully they have been thinking about it for a while over the summer, but it certainly hasn't been, it has not been normed. It's not a standardized test. But I'll tell you guys this. Remember, every school always gave their own test. When you would bring your kids in, they had their own test that worked for them. It wasn't official, but it gave them an idea of, whether or not your child had the skills that they feel you need for their particular school. So they were always all doing their own tests that were not standardized or normed. I believe ISAGNY, who's the organization of all the private schools, is involved in this, and I hope that they have good teachers administering. They say that the people administering the test are experienced early childhood educators. But again, that's why I say to you, to the extent you can wait a little while, give them a little more experience giving the test before you have your child tested. That's probably what I would do. Just because I know look, we're doing online classes now with 4-year-olds. We never did that in the past. And it took us some time to really figure out what you have to do to keep the kids engaged and involved and working and having fun. So my thinking is that it's going to probably take them a little time to really get better at it. That's just my personal belief. I hope that they spent a lot of time on this, but honestly, I don't know. And, nobody really knows outside of the people who have been involved in the creation of this test. How would you select a date within the range? We have to test. We have a date soon, but I wonder if we should reschedule. Thomas, like I said, if your child's about, traditionally, with tests that are normed, if your child's about to go from 4 to 5, you always want to get the child tested before they become 5, right before they actually turn 5. But again, this is not a normed test. I personally would try to wait a little while and make sure my child had experience, answering questions over Zoom, working with someone over Zoom, wearing those headphones, doing what they're going to have to do on this test, which is something they've never probably had to do before. So I would make sure your child has some experience, and I would put it off longer if I could. That's what I would do. That's probably what I would recommend that you do. That's just me. That's what I think. I just know that with some more experience, your child will get better and more comfortable doing this. So that's my advice. This year, can we get a chance to go to the private school? What I've seen when I go to the websites is that most of them are doing online tours. But again, when you apply, ask. Many of these schools are opening, although some of them are opening with tents, and they're not necessarily opening in their regular buildings. So the question is are they going to give you some opportunity to go in person? Everything I've seen online has talked about online tours. But again, when you apply, they may give you another option. So I would say, what I would say is that ask them if that's going to be a possibility. And as I said, things could change. Right now, they're opening a lot of these schools and kids are going. And so maybe they might decide, even potentially if the numbers are good on COVID, maybe they'll decide to meet the kids. As of now, it just seems like it's all going to be done online. How much confidence do I have that the Testing Mom T&E questions will resemble the T&E test? Well, let me tell you this. I have a lot of confidence that our materials which are based on all of the different tests that are given around the country to young children. My practice questions are based on those questions. They're similar in structure, format, in how they ask the questions to the kinds of, all the different kinds of early childhood tests that children get. Because we have families all over the country taking many different tests. So what I've done is I've pulled types of questions, all different types of questions. So I feel very confident that our materials work on the concepts that are going to be on this test, but I have not seen this test. Nobody has, as far as I know, except for the people involved in giving it and maybe a few people who have taken it so far. So I haven't seen it. I don't know exactly what they're going to look like, but what I did was I took all our questions from the many different types of tests that are out there and given to 4-year-olds, and I sort of mixed them up and put them into both practice questions where you could just practice the questions different ways, and I built them into stories where you can tell a story and then ask the question. So they'll have some familiarity with perhaps the types of questions that will be on this test as much as we can possibly do for you this year. And remember, you know, I never knew, for example, exactly what every particular school would do in their own pull out type of practice or interview. But we always have prepared children for those interviews and they do well. But again, we're really working on those skills that we know the schools are looking for. Would you know if any of the schools are more open to fall birthdays for kindergarten? Oh, age 5 by October instead of September 1. You know, in the past, they have not been open to that, most of them. Again, these are different times. You can always ask, but in the past, that's been really a no, because they want the kids to all be the same age, and unless they have a lot of really young kids in their class, it would surprise me very much if they would not adhere to their own birthday rules. That I don't believe. In the verbal reasoning questions, are there right or wrong answers, or is it about how you answer the question? For example, which picture doesn't belong with the musician? There's also an instrument that touches the floor. Would that be considered a wrong answer? Well, you always get into that when you have very bright kids and very bright parents, that you can sometimes find something that would explain a difference in a picture like that. Hopefully they you know, with normed tests, for example, you've given them to so many people that you find those kinds of things out, that oh, there's something different here and that would make something not belong. The question I gave you was a very hard question, by the way. There are easier questions than that, but really bright kids will find those things that are kind of different. But my guess is that, especially with this test being, you know, it kind of not normed, if kids come up with, and they're very verbal and they find things that are different and true, that I would think that they would make a note of it, you know, in the comment section. And I expect that there will be a comment section on this test because of the fact that it's also called the thinking and engagement test. So they have to talk about how engaged the child is. So if it's a very verbal child who thinks outside the box and shows that they think outside the box, I would think that they would write that in the report. Any ideas if the facilitators will prompt your child for more information? Our child consistently answers direct question, which is with as little as possible. He can be verbally expressive, but in the language example, he might just say something's limited, in other words. They should say anything else. Can you tell me more? That is what a good evaluator will do. We hope that's what they would do here as well. But again, when you practice with them at home, or if you work with a tutor, our tutors know to work with them to teach them to say as much as possible, so that they get all the points. That's what we're going to try to, that's what we try to work with kids to make sure they'll do. So for the expressive language, how would a child that speaks more than one language be evaluated? I would say you should tell them that your child speaks several languages. And again, hopefully they will put that in the report. If your child, if they are less verbal and it is said in the report that they speak multiple languages, that will explain it to the school. So that might be helpful to them. Like certainly that's in some of the older testing, and in many tests you can do that and it makes a difference. And especially if they're looking for expressive language, you know, knowing that the child speaks multiple languages and they maybe don't do quite as well on expressive language, that would be a good explanation for why they might not do quite as well. And that would be something then they could take up with your nursery school to find out, well, how well does the child, you know, speak, and when they're comfortable, are they verbal? How verbal are they? That kind of thing. Can many 4-year-olds do the nonverbal reasoning patterns? They seem quite difficult. They do seem difficult when you see them at first, but yes, they can. The questions, it's interesting, the type of question I showed you is similar to what's on the New York City G&T test for 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. And they do seem hard at first, but one of the things about them is, like for example, there's 10 very common types of analogies, nonverbal analogies, and when we teach the kids, we teach them all 10 types. And in my classes page, by the way, you can go there and look at nonverbal analogies, and you can take a class yourself in the 10 types of analogies. But we teach that, and so once you know what to look for, they're actually not that hard. So yes, they can do these, and in fact, on the in New York City, it's kids do better on the nonverbal test than they do on the verbal test, which is the OLSAT. They tend to do better on the NNAT, which is all shapes and figures, like the one I showed you. They do much better on that than they do on the OLSAT, which is all verbal, which is interesting. For schools that do not ask for an essay on their essay form, is it necessary or even possible to submit one? Even if they ask anything, I would submit, like if they say, why are you interested in this school? That gives you an opportunity to talk about your child, and give an essay about your child, their personality, why do you think that school's a fit. Even if they don't ask for anything, you know, I would say they're going to be asking for stuff this time because, you know, they're not going to be able to meet your child. So, you know, make sure there's an opportunity for you to tell them something about your child, whether it's in the essay, whether it's in the video you send, or a letter to them about it. I believe you should submit something like, I just want to tell you about my child, especially if they don't ask anything and they're just going to use this test, perhaps. You can submit it, and it's something you may want to talk to me about. And if there's a specific situation, we can talk about it, what to do, but I would try very hard to get as much information to the school as you can without going overboard beyond what they ask for, but so that they'll get to know your child. Some schools ask for more than others in the past. Well, okay, sorry to dwell, but schools want their applications ASAP. Trinity, which has a limited number of interview slots, is it okay? Well, you know, you can still send in your application, but you might just try to do to set up the test a little later if you can. You might say, this year you can't say we're going to be traveling. I can't say that, but I would still try to schedule the test later if you can. If you are a sibling, how long can you delay? My child has a summer birthday, but also a sibling. So in other words, you're a sibling, and it sounds like, they want to know soon if you're interested in their school. So again, December is the last of when you can do it. So, maybe do it at the end of October or the beginning of November if you can. Some of the questions are relatively hard, especially for a 4-year-old. Are they really expected to answer them correctly, or is it about how they approach the question? Well, what I would say to you is go on the site and start with the easiest questions that we have, and build up to some of the ones I showed you were harder. Some were like for 4. Let me just see, how hard were they that hard? Let me just go back for a second. Okay, so well, these are the kinds of questions they ask to a kindergarten applicant. This is kind of a harder one. Like with the math questions, I would, first you want to make sure they can count. That's, before you ever try to have them add or subtract anything. This is a harder one right here. But start with counting, and then you can go to some addition and then subtraction. But if you start with our very easiest questions, you can build up to some of these, especially a lot of these. Again, if you go, we have some much easier ones. This is a little bit of a harder one. But these are the level and types of questions that you could see on a test like this. I see these on types of things on kindergarten readiness and kindergarten application types of questions. This is a little harder. They might, sometimes what they'll do, and we have these as well, like they'll show, like I'll have like pictures of little feet, and it might be, they're smaller and they won't show a ruler, but they'll show like feet, and it's how many feet long is the worm, but I mean real little pretend feet, and you just count the feet. So for little ones, they might ask questions like that, really young ones. Things like this, they would read to them. So the child has to listen and listen to the answer choices. This one is, they probably would ask a different type of question first, which might be which one starts with the letter k, k, k sound, or the sound k, k, k. And there would be 3 things that don't and 1 that started with it. This one is sort of the opposite, which one does not begin with a k, k, k sound. This is a harder one, but this could be on the test, this type of thing. This is typical of what used to be on the ABLE at this level. So yeah, but again, if you start with easier questions and you build to the harder ones, you'd be so surprised how well kids can do on these kinds of things if they do a little practice. Will the kids need to use a mouse or touch the screen to answer the questions? Will they use pencil and paper? I believe they will not use pencil and paper, and I don't believe they will use a mouse or touch the screen either. I believe that the way it might get done is that, let's say a question like this, well, you could either, they might say, have you name what it is, or they might have like circles of different colors underneath, and they might say, what color is the circle beneath the picture, that, and that's how they would identify the answer. But no, they don't need to use paper and pencil or touch the screen. I don't believe it's that type of test. Are there going to be more dates available for the T&E? As of now, the latest dates are early October. So it seems like the The late dates have already been taken. I think you better ask them. I don't know the answer to that. Ask them if later dates will be made available later. Find out about that. Off topic, but I know you want to know. So do we. G&T or Hunter, what's happening? We don't know yet. We're waiting to hear. Hunter says they're going to come on with a process. That's what we've heard, but we don't know what it is. And we don't know about G&T yet. And really, I think the New York City DOE is just trying to open the schools right now. So I think that's their #1 priority, is getting school going. And then they'll announce and let us know more later about that. If the kid's language is not English, is there a chance for them to get into the private school? If they speak some English at all? Find out. I guess I don't know. I need to know, do they speak some English? But if not, they didn't say anything in the materials about giving this test in any other language. If English is their second language and they don't speak it that well, I think that's something you want to tell them. Let them know, and what can we do, and talk to them about it, and see what they say, and talk to the schools about it as well, because yes, you should be able to get into private school even if English is not your first language. But this test, we don't know if they give it in another language, or what their what they would do, what accommodations they might make. I don't know. How is the private school going to weigh testing results this year? I think it's going to vary among schools, because remember, some schools, maybe asking for a lot of, they might be meeting the child, and maybe they'll observe them through Zoom in their classroom. Maybe they'll have a lot of factors to look at. Other schools may not have as many. So if they don't have as many factors to look at, then I think they would weigh the test more than maybe a school that's looking at things like they're looking at everything. They're seeing the child, they're talking to the child by Zoom. They're going to look at your video. They're going to do everything they can to get to know you and find out about your child. But the reason they do these tests is just so that they have some way to, one data point on which they can compare all the kids who are applying. Is it possible to seem too prepared? Well, probably not, because especially for this, because none of us know exactly what it's going to be. So it's going to be a surprise for your child, because it's going to be different, even though we try to get them as ready as we can. Oh, we have a nice answer here. That's great. Yeah, it's going to be different than what they've prepared for, but they should have the skills and abilities to transfer their ability to speak effectively with their expressive language, or solve a nonverbal type of question. I don't think that's something to worry about. But one of our attendees has said, yes, they will have later dates open later. They open them exactly 3 weeks in advance. Thank you for telling us that. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you. They're scheduling it 3 weeks out. Thank you guys for letting us know. Yeah, okay. Thanks. You guys know everything. I really appreciate that. Okay. I heard you can only sign up for the Tne 21 days from the day you sign up. So later dates just might not be available yet. Okay, so they're going to tell you how to sign up for it. So just, don't go in to sign up quite yet. Give yourself a little bit of time to do some practice, some preparation, and then go in to sign up. Remember, the test is going to go on until December. What was the date I told you? I have it somewhere. Till December 18th. So give yourself a little time before you sign up for it, and they should be able to do it a little bit later. So I apologize. I kept you guys late. I totally apologize. I hope that all of you will join Testing Mom Join, get your kids into some of our small learning pods. They love them. If you can get them in, or do some one-on-one with us. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to meet your child and help them. Let us know how we can help you. Once you're a member, you can always write to us, ask us questions. We'll let you know everything we know. And we appreciate some of you for sharing information with us as well, that we're still learning every day. We've been doing everything we can to learn as much about this test as we can. And I feel like we've got a good handle on it, and we've got a good way to teach kids in a very engaging way with our stories and questions. So I'm very pleased with where we are with this right now. Just keep in mind that, for 4-year-olds, there's only so much that they are expected to know at this age. And as long as we help them get to that place where they know these things, they know how to answer questions, they know how to express themselves on this sort of situation, on an online Zoom test, they're going to be fine. So, and they are going to look at other things as well. So it's not just going to be this is just one of other things that they're going to look at. So thank you for being here tonight, everyone. And we hope to see you as a Testing Mom member and in some of our classes. Good night. And thanks, Ivan. And Christina.